MMA rants and raves, the UFC on Fox 2, Chael Sonnen versus Michael Bisping. Well guys, a lot can happen in a short period of time. Munoz is out with an injury, and the logical replacement is Michael Bisping. I mean, this is a guy who definitely deserves this fight. He's looked great as of late, versatile fighter. He's actually done well light heavyweight, and he came down to middleweight a while ago, and he's looked pretty good. I mean, he has a lot of things going for him. I mean, he's really a very good athlete. He has incredibly good cardio, really good stand-up, good boxing. He's accurate, he's quick, and he's got good wrestling for a British fighter. You know, it's remarkable. His wrestling is pretty good. His takedown defense is good. And I think his chin is underrated. You know, people talk about what happened with Dan Henderson, but that's nothing to be ashamed of. I mean, Dan Henderson has done that to a lot of people. And since then, I mean, you know, he's taken shots. I mean, Kang hit him, I remember, and Akiyama. It looked like he was in trouble, but he came back to win those fights. So he's a guy that's proven that he can be in trouble and he can come back and win. So that's a mark of a good fighter as well. Now, as far as Chael Sonnen, well, we were supposed to be seeing the most anticipated rematch in UFC history against Anderson Silva. Unfortunately, it hasn't happened. Of course, Sonnen was out for a very long time, and then Anderson Silva was continuing to be dominant, as Anderson Silva has been for a long time. And, of course, now he's injured, so, you know, these things happen. And now Sonnen comes back, looks great against Brian Stann, and we're still waiting for that rematch. But in the meantime, these are good fights. Bisping's a good fight. Munoz would have been a good fight. Now, as far as the way I see this fight going, I want to make a point here. And if you watched Bisping's last fight against Jason Miller isn't a strong wrestler, and he took Bisping down quite decisively. And it kind of surprised me. And he was controlling him up against the cage. And in my opinion, he won that first round. The thing about Miller is he wasn't able to keep up the pace. He wasn't able to keep up that pace that he needed, because if he could continue to do what he was doing in the first round, he would have had a good chance in that fight. Now, the point I'm making is if Miller can take Bisping down, certainly I think Sonnen can take him down. I mean, you're talking about a totally different class of wrestling with Chael Sonnen. I mean, he's one of the best in mixed martial arts in the wrestling department, and the very best by far in the middleweight division. And then, of course, you have to look back and see the guys that Bisping has faced. You know, Evans took him down a number of times, you know, big dominant takedown. Hamill took him down, and it seems, I mean, looking back, those are the two highest level wrestlers that Bisping has faced, and both of those fights were really close. So, makes you wonder, you know, if he faces a guy, in my opinion, who is a better wrestler than both of those guys, and Chael Sonnen, you know, it might even be a tougher task for him. And it's, you know, I'm just thinking about it right now, because what's really interesting, if you look at Sonnen's last fight and if you look at Bisping's last fight, there's two things I remember. When Sonnen faced Stann, he was very aggressive and attacked Stann right away and took him down shortly. And if you look at what happened Miller against Bisping, he did the same thing against Michael Bisping. What Sonnen did to Stann. I mean, he came in very aggressive and took Bisping down. And that's the way Sonnen fights. He's very aggressive. I mean, he's very relentless with his wrestling. And he can come up with the same game plan. And I think that Sonnen might have more confidence in this fight because of the fact, you know, Bisping hasn't been a submission threat. I mean, the last guy he submitted was back in 2005. So it's not like Sonnen has to worry about Anderson Silva or Damian Maia or something like that. I mean, you know, obviously Bisping is not that type of fighter. Of course, you got to be careful. You never know what can happen. But I think it can give him more confidence to work his ground game, because it's likely that, you know, Sonnen is going to be able to take him down. I think he will. And of course, Bisping's guard is really good. People have to understand that. If you look at the fight against Evans, he was actually attacking off his back. He does protect himself well when he's on his back. And he does well by getting back to his feet as well. And that's another thing you have to look at. I think it's something to look at, which is really interesting, is what kind of referee is going to be in this fight. If it's one of those referees that don't have much patience and they stand guys up quickly, that can really benefit Bisping. Because if Sonnen isn't active enough, and of course, if Bisping forces him in a position not to be active enough by not only protecting himself but attacking off his back, the fight might go back to its feet, and that really benefits Bisping because Bisping has the advantage in the stand-up. And then, of course, you got to understand Sonnen. His stand-up is underrated. If you watch his fights, especially against Yushin Okami and even Anderson Silva, the guy can. I mean, he does well on his feet. I think his stand-up is underrated because his wrestling is so much looked at because he's so good with his wrestling. So I think he can stand as well, and I think his stand-up will be good enough. It's not as good as Bisping, but it'll be good enough to set up his takedowns more. And the question is, can he keep Bisping down, and can he do enough to keep it on the ground without having the ref stand it up, and maybe go for a finish at some point, which is not going to be easy against Bisping. I mean, he's a tough fighter. So, I think it's an interesting fight. I mean, look, the Munoz fight didn't happen. That would have been a great fight, but this is also going to be a really good fight. So I'm really looking forward to seeing it. As far as a prediction, I think that Sonnen, I think his wrestling is really, really, really at the highest level that Bisping has ever faced. Like I said, the very best in the middleweight division. And I think he's going to do enough to win. I think his takedowns are very dominant. He's going to be able to take Bisping down. I think he could use his stand-up to set up his takedowns better. And it's just a 3-round fight. And usually, I mean, if you look at fights that are shorter fights, like 3 rounds as opposed to 5 rounds, I think it benefits the wrestler because wrestling could really eat up the clock. I mean, you could take a guy down, you can burn up a few minutes very quickly as long as you remain active enough, the ref doesn't stand you up, and of course avoid submissions. And look, Bisping's a guy who has been taken down before, and especially against high-level wrestlers. I mean, if Evans can take him down, I think certainly Chael Sonnen can take him down. So I'm going to go with a prediction here. I'm going to go with Chael Sonnen to win this fight. Would like to know what you think about the fight and the UFC on Fox 2 card. Please leave your comments below the video, like this video, and thank you for tuning in.